I love being a normal Russian kid. Other than that one time I pulled all the legs off my toy horses, like a psychopath. I'm gonna grow up without any complications at all and—
Alert! Your brother was just executed for being associated with a gang that attempted to kill the Serena. She would have spared him, but he was so horny for martyrdom that he insisted on taking all the blame and got capped.
The world is clearly deep in the grips of capitalism. The children are working in the mines, the bankers are fat, and the middle class exists. But this will not last, for the proletariat becomes conscious of the possibility and of the necessity for socialism. But before we can bring about the moneyless utopia, we must first gather as much money as possible. The first vocal vigilante to voluntarily venerate the valiant socialist vanguard is the viewer, while Zeke counsels our central commune. We bear a butcher in our band, but because for this blueprint we're only beckoning bruisers, we won't even bother baptizing this bozo with a brand. Considering that we're campaigning for communism, we can't have any crops for him to cook anyway. But you know what makes starving peasants feel a lot better about their empty granaries? Public parks. Not only do they beautify the neighborhood, but they even provide a staple source of fiber in the communist diet. In centrally planned economies, individual entrepreneurship is a cardinal sin, but luckily for you, Raid Shadow Legends is here to do the heavy industrial lifting. Put on your Praximus Labor Union helmets for a moment, because Raid has launched an incredible and generous tree planting initiative. But every new user who downloads the game through my link and gets to level 20 contributes impact points to our tree planting initiative. Wait, Raid is celebrating their own birthday by doubling the impact points. Wowee! Raid is going to publish our results in a month, and we need to have planted more trees than— Actually, I've decided to be more merciful, and instead of embarrassing the competition, we're gonna just play Raid Shadow Legends. Whether you're an avid gamer or just need something pretty to stare at after a long shift on the collective farm, Raid Shadow Legends has a way of pulling you in. There's something oddly satisfying about watching a plan come together, lining up your team, seeing them grow stronger, and crushing whatever challenge gets thrown your way. It's the kind of game where you can clock in for a quick session, make some progress, and log off feeling like you've got something done. Even if, in the true factory worker fashion, you know you'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Join the game and instantly get this huge anniversary starting pack, including epic Zargala and a whole bunch of other loot. Then, just because I'm such a cupid, I'll give you this promo code to release her boyfriend, Supreme Gallic. You're going to get a Sun Wukong promo code and Alice the Wanderer just for playing. So getting to level 20 is going to be a walk in the park, except we're not going to plant the trees in the park until after you've done the walk, but still. Come find me under the name Praximus and join my clan, the Praximites. I want you to imagine the most hideous, grotesque, insidious personality in all of recent history, and then make him way fatter and greasier. Accidentally give him some Mongolian features while you're at it, because you've heard a rumor he might have Kalmyk ancestors. What is the worst possible situation for the entire planet now that this freak exists? 95% ward save, that's what. Bruisers can each contribute 5% ward save to their lord thanks to this ability. So we're gonna stack him as tall as the Motherland Calls statue, and guarantee the dictatorship of the proletariat begins in style. Now, I know what you're thinking. Art belongs to the people. It must leave its deepest roots in the very thick of the working masses. It should be understood for the masses and loved by them. And for that reason, we can't just settle for 19 of whatever the hell this guy is. Instead, we've got a mod which adds a whole bunch of new, unique career choices for them, so we can dress them up like fat little doll men before releasing them to commit acts of mass murder. A proper society is one in which all of the various trades and professions are democratically represented in a great central committee of trade unions. For the trade unions are a school of communism, a school of management, a school of economic administration, a school of socialism. For this playthrough, we're gonna have our fancy bruisers represent the various trades and create the perfect union of syndicates. We can't just assign them jobs willy-nilly though. Being a tradesman requires training, so we're going to first have to put our promising prodigies to work to pay their way through school. Now we must pursue the final abolition of the whole regime of the monarchy. In an effort to pave the way for what is to come later, this task is the perfect context to start training up our brutal boys through combat. Two monarchies nearby are feuding, allowing us to exploit their division to earn some capital. We take the Nordland contract and waste no time pulverizing Ostland. Valmir von Raukov is an energetic young man with a slightly Slavic tinge, and his older brother Oleg even more so. Unfortunately for filthy Kislevite aristocrats, socialism has no time for their bourgeois antics, and Vladimir Ilyich Goldfag is here to collectivize their privilege. Not all ogres have the decency to sacrifice their individuality for the greater good, however, and some of these parasites attempt to exploit our exploiting by working for the Raukov Volkov brothers. I pity them for their earthly desires. I pity them so hard that they all die. Uncontrollably committed to the communist cause, Harms comes to capitalize on our community-covered coaching and to cultivate some crusading. His charitable contributions catalyze our commencing contract, coming to completion casually. These fools are lulled into a sense of complacency by our predictable, respectable participation in contracts. Before long, we shall burn Altdorf to the ground so that the Empire can be a safer, more prosperous place for the common man. Draika hears of our availability and mercilessness and offers us a contract to beat Festus and Throth to death as vengeance for their polluting activities. Draika has obviously never read The Spoils of Progress, Environmental Pollution in the Soviet Union, and has no idea that she's just upgraded her problem 1,000 times over. However, Festus and Throth are both doctors in their own way, which enrages Vladimir Ilyich Golgfag on sight, since he knows that the ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas, i.e., the class which is the ruling material force of society is at the same time its ruling intellectual force. Therefore, taking a note from Stalin's doctor's plot and from Pol Pot, we elect to eliminate the erudite. So we can really knock out 3 birds with 1 stone here, by killing 2 doctors and destroying the environment in the process. On our way to fight the Fecundites, we see some other communists who aren't us. We hate communists who aren't us, so we make a note to come back later and kill these Trotskys. Soon enough, we're upon Hergig, where some freakily foul foes are found festering. Festus doesn't care to wait for our judgment and sallies out to meet us in the field. This battlefield is identical to the previous, although the sky smells like butts and the enemy forces are 3 times as numerous. However, we too are more numerous, and we are more than ready to face down the foe. As the enemy approaches, we launch a surprise attack and beat the body odor out of Egarl Painbringer within seconds. A minor miscalculation, since now there are 3 heavy-hitting monsters pummeling our noblest altruist. I decide that getting bullied by these bozos is overrated, so Goldfag, the viewer, and Harms gang up on Cormac's Spite Taker and send him to the hospital in several separate bags. Our flanking maneuver goes off perfectly, and Festus riposts by charging headlong into our lead belchers, interrupting their work. At this point, the balance of power is looking rather unfavorable, but I have one more trick up my sleeve. Festus gets distracted trying to disassemble our siege engine, allowing the lead belchers to resume tearing up the enemy front line, giving our hero unit the opportunity to slip away from the infantry and start ganging up on the remaining large monsters. Festus attempts to save his beloved progeny, only to get clocked out in seconds. At the sight of their leader fleeing, the demons disperse. With all this loot we've socialized, we're able to bring Arch Monarch and Abuse Dumpster into the fold. Nothing brings a tear to my eyes faster than seeing all these soon-to-be workers coming together to share in some delightfully exploitative violence. Draika, my employer, is very clearly exploiting me because she'll only pay me if I actually do work for her, which is totally unfair. As we approach the Brass Keep, I realize that the Fecundites might get killed before I accumulate enough satisfaction points to end the contract. I really don't want to walk all the way up to the Hell Pit. I'd rather vacation in a gulag, which might be the same thing. Unfortunately, there's no getting around it. Festus just couldn't keep his shit together and the entire faction goes down like the dodos. Luckily enough, Throth sends armies down to persecute us for our egalitarian way of life. Skaven are the natural prey of ogres, which is a fate they attempt to stave off with the use of their ingenious contraptions. For reasons that I still do not understand even now watching the footage, the dangerous warfire throwers react to our opening salvos by grouping up into very tight formations, perhaps clutching each other in fear? In any event, they're completely destroyed by a single barrage. Gorich is not like other rats though. He's big, he's bad, and he's slightly less mentally damaged than the rest of his kin. He boldly charges our cannons, seeking to regain the initiative, only to encounter Golgfag the Honorable, who jumps on him along with his entire posse. Our entire army of ogres charges forward to find that only a single clan rat spear formation is awaiting them. Arch Monarch keeps Gorich busy while the rest of the gang kills his entire army. And once the rats are exterminated, we gang up on the big rat himself and put an end to his rampage. Gorich nearly escapes until a pile of trash lands on his head and slows him down long enough for Golgfag to land the finishing blow. Subsequent Skaven skirmishes settle similarly, bringing an end to the contract. Draika thinks she's safe in her newly expanded forests, not realizing that as far as we're concerned, the woods are collectively owned and destined to be used to fuel our red war machine. We celebrate our victory by founding a new camp, organized by the faithful Commissar, the Red Baron. The viewer has become our first graduate and takes up the bodyguard trade, which grants him a very powerful healing ability with 3 uses, upsetting Fanny Kaplan greatly. With this development, we're ready to burn Germany to the ground. I mean, liberate the oppressed. The Barrow Legion offers us a contract against Middenland, Muzalon, Kazrak's tribe, and the Broken Axe tribe, and in doing so opens up the way south for us. Replete with cash and stuffed with the grain we've lifted off peasants along the way, we begin a reign of terror unlike anything that has come before. Boris Todbringer sees the storm on the horizon and threatens to live up to his name, but we don't speak German, so we think he just means that he's going to introduce us to someone named Todd. Boris Todbringer and his blue bullies stand proud until we drop a pile of iron on their heads and get them moving. Before they have time to begin a proper counterattack, our lead belchers obliterate their cavalry formations on the flanks. After that, it's just a mosh pit massacre until nothing remains of Todbringer's army. First Middenstog, then Middenheim, and then Marienburg, where we host a quick graduation for Harms, who joins the viewer in bodyguard duty. Taking Caron and Languille brings us to Eric B. Elastic's attention, who has no trouble seeing the advantages of being the first amongst equals when it comes to planning food distribution. It is clear now, no force on earth can save capitalism from the fate of being crushed by the proletariat. We end the Barrow Legion contract getting paid oodles of cash for scarring the face of the Empire and Bretonnia, but we're far from finished. Now, the Bone Rattlers solicit our service for burning Altdorf to the ground, and we happily accept. After using Golgfag's ability to teleport home, we immediately rush the Imperial Vanguard. It was during this battle that I realized that the Bodyguard Bruiser's Guardian ability stacks twice, giving a powerful 30% physical resistance. With this advantage, the inevitable 95% ward save from our Bruisers will make Golgfag even more powerful. At this stage, we're already basically impossible to harm, which makes me shudder at how OP we might already be on a lower difficulty. With Helmet Fireback out of the way, we have no issue seizing Frudenwald for our client. Arc Monarch and Abuse Dumpster become our third and fourth bodyguards, which we celebrate with a case of Bugman's Best Brew. After seizing Hergig, Franz shows up for a little showdown. One might assume that Karl Franz, Elector Count of Reichland and Emperor of Man, would put up some kind of fight, but no, we dispatched them so effortlessly that I think I might as well disband all of my non-heroic units. They have become totally obsolete in the face of our new, perfect, socialized man. With Karl in the infirmary, we help ourselves to Wiseman, and nothing is left now but to take Altdorf. Breaking into Altdorf goes the way that a certain someone expected Operation Barbarossa to go. All we've got to do is kick in the door, and the whole edifice will come crumbling down. After kicking the door in, we get into a tussle with the defenders, who quickly realize that our heroes are simply beyond killing. I don't know how ogres can be so OP right out of the gate, but I'm not going to stop until capitalism is history. I can't imagine a worse fate for Altdorf than being left in the hands of the Greenskins. They don't have collective property, they don't even have private property, they just have stinky, broken property. Now that we have our nearly invincible cadre of Bruiser bodyguards, it's time to power level some more Bruisers and get this Soviet Union cracking.
Alert! Bernstein just rejected Marxian fundamentalism, arguing that Marx's predictions didn't come true and that a gradualist approach is needed to carry socialism forward. This won't do. At this rate, the movement will lose all its energy and wither away.
Fine. First, we have to finish off this contract against Reichland, and then we can undermine Bernstein's disgustingly moderate philosophy with our doctrine of violence and exploitation. One thing is for sure, we no longer require useful idiots in our main army. From now on, only the most elite and robust of socialist enforcers shall accompany me into battle. Knowing better than to waste perfectly good, useful idiots, we enlist Carr to take command of them and continue the military campaign while we set off on an ideological one. Once Karlberg falls, Reichland taps out, and with that contract completed, we're now free to show that bonehead Bernstein just how absolutely correct Marx was.
Alert! Marx said that a proletariat uprising was inevitable, but you accidentally started telling people that it would require a revolutionary vanguard, implying it isn't inevitable at all.
Maybe I can just get around that by saying the revolutionary vanguard is inevitable. Ha, who am I kidding? I'll just kill anyone who notices the contradiction. Ogres have not the time to think about toy forms of democratism, but instead they will have a lively sense of their responsibility, knowing as they do from experience that an organization of real revolutionaries will stop at nothing to rid itself of an unworthy member. The time has come to establish our union of workers' councils, and there's no place to start like St. Petersburg. Golgfag arrives by train and immediately declares that equality is here to violently liberate the bourgeois' heads from their capitalist shoulders. Unfortunately, our invasion of the Citadel starts off not so great, when our wall breaching ability just straight up doesn't work. leaving us standing around outside looking like a bunch of schmucks. Using the door is a little less dramatic, but once it's open, we can see the opulent Slavic riches ripe for the taking, and our determination miraculously returns. Eric B. Elastic punches a hole straight through the wall single-handedly, demonstrating that even major bugs can be overcome through the sheer force of socialized will. For the first 6 minutes, we let Goldfag do all the work, since even at this difficulty level, he's already invincible. But it's taking so long that we call the Socialist Vanguard in just to speed things up. Petrograd's farms are rapidly fertilized by chunks hewn directly from the bodies of the working class. 13 minutes in and we're still duking it out in the lower terrace. In order to achieve revolutionary victory, one requires more than brute strength, and this is our opportunity to demonstrate serious strategic chops as well. We choose to go for an objective victory, and fight our way through the objectives until we find ourselves at the Victory Plaza. Once the victory timer counts down, disorganized mobs try to mount a final defense but are simply swept aside by the inevitable progression of history. Castalton, stunned by the audacity of these altruists challenging his authority on democratic grounds, offers peace immediately, demonstrating a severe underestimation of the communist desire for blood. Fully realizing just how dangerous we are, Rasputin decides to attack and kills the fledgling Munionist. Now there can be no hope of rehabilitation for this dangerous, murderous madman. Of course, it was kinda my fault for leaving his camp undefended in the middle of enemy territory. Look, if I wanted to be concerned for the welfare of the disadvantaged, we wouldn't have been socialists. Instead of mourning Munionists, we take Castle von Rauken, activating Castalton's trap card, who then besieges me while we're still looting our victims. The Kislevite soldiers are initially encouraged by the ease with which they dispatch our garrison soldiers, not realizing that those are purely sacrificial. Their confident vanguard then crashes boldly into our bodyguards and is surprised by the immediate and violent rebuke. It's no big deal, they think, still clearly in the advantage according to the balance of power. Goldfag makes repeated use of an area debuff, and the Bruisers make use of their area buffs, and Kislev pays an enormous price for every single percent that they knock off of our health bars. As our health decreases, our balance of power decreases with it, and before long it looks as though victory for the enemy will be certain, and enormous enemy reinforcements don't help that prognosis. In a sudden burst of terrifying lethality, Goldfag bursts out of the melee and straight towards the reinforcing general, killing him in a mere 3 strikes. If corpses could pile on top of each other, they'd be as tall as the Kremlin by now. As we cross over the 10-minute mark, each of our Bruisers remains in tip-top shape with hundreds of kills each, and the monarchists finally recognize the power they're up against and shove off. Not only have we dealt a blow to the Russian Empire from which they will never fully recover, but they also dropped this crown, which Goldfag presumably wears like a toe ring. The Nemesis crown bestows powerful combat capabilities, and we are now fully unstoppable. We use the breathing room that we paid for with Kislevite blood to reform the camp now, this time under Lungulus's capable leadership. We next attack Zoishank, which the game forces us to play because the game is on a high difficulty and doesn't believe how good the bodyguards are. Goldfag and his Bruiser bodyguards don't have time for berating these bourgeois bandits and use vanguard deployment to start the fight right in their faces. Perhaps wisely, Rasputin's soldiers pay more attention to the bodyguard Bruisers charging into the fight than Goldfag himself, because once they arrive, the situation devolves very quickly for the Russians. Kislev's extremely annoying, constant special snowflake visual effects do nothing to protect them, and this army gets consumed even more rapidly than the previous one. Nothing says socialism has arrived like mounds of corpses that occlude the sun, and we give a retreating Castalton something to remember us by. I mean, on top of all of his followers being eaten. From here, it is a simple matter for us to take Castle Alexandrinov, and Kar seizes Wolfenburg from the south at the same time, ending the Russian Empire for good. Now that our beautiful and surely eternal Soviet Union has seized control of the Promised Land, we can bring forth our various trade union representatives. Francis II as a smelter gut, Toxic Mask as a drunkard, Quake Riley as a mercenary captain, Sirio as a pit fighter, Maxwell Hopkins as a sellsword, Coupled Sphere as a Fomorian, Tanuki Crow as a Kurobuta, and Space Drake as a Kurobuta as well. Tweak Bear Sonling as an Ironsider, and Cade 6 as an Ironhide. Let me introduce you to one of my favorite ideas, internationalism. What does this mean? Well, we took over the Russian Empire, that's one nation. You think we're satisfied with our bloodletting being contained to just one single nation? Fool. Thanks to the power of internationalism, we can justify going into our neighbor's yard and kicking his dog and taking his barbecue. I mean, if we were in a capitalist country where they made barbecues, but we're still gonna kick the dog. But who is strong enough to warrant our attention? attention. We're here to prove that bruisers are busted, not just bully the downtrodden all day. Malice Darkblade is a sufficiently lethal duelist with which we can demonstrate the mettle of our mandate, so we waste no time traveling north to find this worthy adversary to face him down, and we quickly discover Malice's faction at the Forest of Decay, which is ironically what we've been calling Draika's Forest ever since we socialized them. To be fair, sailing north suddenly to fight the Dark Elves was kind of an unexpected change of pace, so I don't blame them for being caught off guard by our kooky band of misfits suddenly knocking down their Arctic gatehouse and charging in guns blazing. However, Malice Darkblade was the only person left who could really prove our strength. Look, if you really need a lore explanation, we can just say that socialist governments don't get along, and nobody could be more socialist than the Dark Elves, what with their slavery and their violence. Anyway, the garrison does their best to set up a defensive perimeter and use tactics, but gosh darn, they just can't stem the ogre tide. Golgfag and his entourage decide to slip through the back alleys while our eclectic band keeps the bulk of the enemy occupied in the front. At the same time as the barricades collapse, Vladimir Ilyich Golgfag and his socialist vanguard appear from behind the defenders, and unsurprisingly, their morale does not survive, and neither do they. Some peasants are apparently upset about us trying to steal all their shit and have the audacity to rebel against us, which makes them evil. We call them kulaks, meaning tight-fisted, and they're literally demonic. But crushing counter-revolutionaries can wait. Right now, the only thing that matters is proving our supremacy by dueling Malice and his formidable armies. The tension of facing off with Malice's terrifying army in this blighted land is broken when Toxic Mask accidentally rips the nastiest gas in the history of the natural world. While he takes a break to change his pants, Space Drake and Tanuki rush out of their forward hiding places and start assassinating enemy soldiers in bulk. One of the worst threats they pose is their Medusas, who ignore Golgfag as he tries to eliminate them one by one. Queek masterfully identifies the only friendly unit on the entire enemy side of the map. Honestly, I don't even know how he got over there, and manages to snipe him with a shotgun. Malice decides not to waste any time dispatching us, but is disappointed when the first person he meets is Coupled Sphere, whose gigantic shield completely halts him in his tracks. Seeing Queek as a softer target, he redirects his attention, only to be thwarted again when our bodyguard squad rushes out of the trees and buys him time to escape. At this point, I remember that I had ordered some of our boys to attack some Dark Elves who must have retreated by now, and I find those ogres still pursuing their target on the far side of the map and urgently order them to return. The Dark Elf armies arrayed against us are no joke, but Cade-6 makes it back just in time to remind them just how small horses are compared to his ironclad rhinoceros. We create a gap in their lines using the Nemesis Crown, but it fills back in just as quickly as it forms. Maxwell Hopkins and Sirio arrive not far behind Cade and help stabilize the right flank, but the center remains troubled as Golgfag simply can't keep up with the endless swarms of Medusas. Everyone is doing their part, but the Dark Elves fill the air with ceaselessly swarming bolts like wasps. Seeking to regain some organization, our entire force falls back into the wooded copse and the enemy are quick to follow. Making up for his earlier incontinence, Toxic Mask unleashes a hellish stink which breaks the Druki front line and regains the momentum for Team Takes Your Property. Now the final duel can begin, with Golgfag and his impenetrable ward save against the fearsome demonic duelist Malice, who somehow found the time to dye his hair white during all of this. Francis II uses his weaponsmith ability to massively enhance Golgfag's weapon damage, which Golgfag completely disrespects by ending the fight with a kick to Malice's head. Thousands of corpses litter the field, and Golgfag, with 530 kills himself, is at full health and barely broke a sweat doing it. Truly, the power of the working classes, organized by their trade union councils, are an unstoppable force unlike any the world has ever seen.
Alert! You just had 3 strokes back to back and died. Hope your nefarious second in command doesn't take control against your dying wishes.